have 9 or 10 different client personas in the book, and they kind of, I bring them up in different chapters. And people, sometimes people will say to me, I can totally relate to your story about Joan. Like, I feel like I'm Joan, or I'm Sarah, or I'm whatever. And I think that gives them a sense of reassurance. And it also gives them a glimmer of hope, right? Like, hey, I could improve on this situation. If I hired Ben, things would be better. So I think the book's surprising me too sometimes. Like, I had someone reach out to me and say, we are reading the book in our book club. Okay. Would you be willing to talk to our book club? Okay. So I got on like a 20-minute Zoom, and I was like, okay, what are you guys reading? What are you discussing? And I shared with them some of my author insights, and, I gained clients from it.
Hey there, I just want to take a quick break from today's podcast to tell you about an event that we're hosting August 1 and 2. I'm going to be hosting a small, intimate event for solo and small firm lawyers here in our offices in Fairfax, Virginia. If you've never been to a great legal marketing event before, or even if you have, this is going to be the place for you to start. If you're running a small law firm and you're looking for ways to attract more clients without spending a lot more money, we're going to be diving deep over those 2 days into all of the little DIY things you can do, even if you have a small team. This is going to be perfect for a law firm that's doing between about $500,000 and $1 million in top-line revenue. If you're making more money than that, good for you. You're doing a lot of things right, but this event isn't for you. Let me tell you what this is not. This is not an event where, under the guise of a seminar, we're going to be selling you websites, pay-per-click ads, or other digital marketing media. That's not our space in the market. This is where you're going to learn how to effectively use your next hour and your next dollar in growing your law firm. We'll be part lecture and part workshop. There'll be some prep work to do before the event and some post-event follow-up, so we can answer lingering questions and keep you motivated to building a better life for you and your family. Together, let's figure out why you're not making more money, getting better cases, and converting more of your leads. Again, this is August 1 and 2 in our offices in Fairfax, Virginia. And if you want to be on the early list of people who are getting up-to-date information, just shoot me an email at ben@greatlegalmarketing.com. That's ben@greatlegalmarketing.com, and I'll make sure you're one of the first to know.
Welcome to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, the show where we ask the questions, why aren't more lawyers living flourishing lives and inspiring others? And can you really get wealthy while doing only the work you love with people you like? Many lawyers are. Get ready to hear from your host, Ben Glass, the founder of the law firm Ben Glass Law in Fairfax, Virginia, and Great Legal Marketing, an organization that helps good people succeed by coaching, inspiring, and supporting law firm owners. Join us for today's conversation.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Ben Glass. This is the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, where each episode I get to interview people inside and outside of legal who are making a ding in the world. Renegade Lawyer Podcast is a production of Great Legal Marketing, where smart lawyers and solo and small firms come. These lawyers aren't the ones spending tens of thousands of dollars every month trying to buy advertising and trying to buy leads. Today's going to be really fun. I'm going to let you listen in on a conversation I'm having with Andrea Liebross. Angela is the author of a book called She Thinks Big. She's a big thinking expert for high achieving female entrepreneurs. Although, if you're a guy and you're listening to this and you like the message and you like her philosophy, she will not shun you. You can reach out to Andrea. But she primarily works helping bold, ambitious women make the shift from small thinking and feeling overwhelmed in business and life to getting the clarity, confidence, and freedom that they crave. And Andrea, this is so important because in legal, I think that the woman attorney, particularly the woman trial attorney, like they're my heroes. They have really, let's just say, they just have the hardest job, particularly if they're also raising a family, which many of our members are doing. So they're trying to balance all of these, these heavy weights right on their shoulders. And if they're members of our firm, they're typically members of Great Legal Marketing. They're typically also running a law firm. So that's why I wanted to get you on to talk to you today. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Very good. And tell us a little bit about your background. There's lots and lots of sort of coaches out there. There's mentors. I know that there's a difference between coaches and mentors, but what drives you and how did you end up like here doing this work?
Great question. So I worked for a company for a while in a corporate role where I was recruiting and hiring and training new entrepreneurs. So basically they were like franchise owners. And I stayed there for about 10 years. And after a while, I kind of had enough of the corporate, you know, lingo, and I left and I thought, okay, what's next? And also in the same breath was like, why did I stay there for 10 years? Right. So what I realized was that I really loved helping these new business owners get through what I've now termed the messy middle. Right. So this is when you have started your business and you could be a year in, you might even be 10 years in, you could be 15 years in, but something shifted where number one, you might have more responsibilities in both at home and in your business because now your business has grown. Okay. And you're realizing, like, oh my gosh, it's almost like this chaos or confusion or overwhelm that's created by success in a sense, because you can't quite handle things the way you did in the beginning. Right. I'm sure you've met some people like this.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the entrepreneurial seizure, Michael Gerber, like, okay, how hard could this be? I'm good
Yeah.
at whatever. Let's go run a business. I'm a good lawyer. Let's go run a business. You realize all the things you don't know. I have a member out in Oklahoma, Matt Davis. He calls it the Badlands. When you start to grow and you're growing into the need for leadership and
Right.
business skills that you've never had the need for
No.
before.
And you started this because of your profession, because of your passion, because of what you wanted to offer the world, not because you necessarily wanted to run a business. You might have started because you wanted to reap the so-called benefits of owning your own business, right? But the freedom that might allow, but along with that comes so many other things. So that's where I kind of realized, like, that's my sweet spot. And that's where I love helping people get through that messy middle. Now, spoiler alert, there's always another messy middle down the road, like in the next stage, right? That it's kind of cyclical.
Sure. So, so most great legal marketing members, they come to us, good lawyers, good people, lacking in generalized business skills.
Yes.
We help them market better, get more clients. We help them fix the holes in the buckets of their business, develop processes and systems. And then they get to this whole other level where, geez, now I need to develop new leaders
Right.
or another set of leaders in the firm. And that's an entirely different, frustrating the first time you go through it. So you're right. But I did have a friend of mine tell me once, and he's the CEO of a major CRM company. He says, when we were three guys in a small office over a pizza parlor in the beginning, writing code, like we had problems. Today I have problems. I like today's problems better.
So true. So true. It's very true. And it's interesting you brought up like the leader part, right? Where I think a lot of people start out where they're the leader and then they're also probably the main deliverer of services. And then they have a lot
Yes,
of
they are.
doers, right? They have a lot of people maybe below doing the tasks, doing the other things. But there comes a point where you need that middle, right? Or even multiple layers in that middle. And that's another stage of the messy middle, in a sense, of when you realize that there's too much of a gap between the doers and the leaders, and you need some implementers or process people in that middle sense. So, middle space.
So yeah, so there's an interesting phenomenon, we teach, and I'm sure you do too, is like, let's talk for a moment about the owner or the founder's ego, because, and I know you've worked with lawyers,
I have.
like biggest thinkers of this proposition, nobody could do this as good as I can.
Right.
So they have a really hard time letting go of the vine,
Mm-hmm.
letting others, the doers, explode their gifts and talents. And that's a real limiter. Over time, we're able to show them you actually serve the world better when you get out of the way.
Yes. Yes. When you get out of the way, 100%.
Yeah, and you become
the
Go
other
ahead.
thing with attorneys especially is, you want to get it right. Okay, you need to get it right the first time. And I think sometimes in the world of business, B minus work that's turned in is better than A plus work that's never turned in. Or sometimes I like to say 81% that's done is done versus 100% that's never done. So, but that's not really a concept in your world that's applicable to the actual delivery of a service or product in a courtroom or through a case. So in a business sense, though, you can kind of get away with that. And that's a hard shift.
Well, and I think you can get away with it in law. Like, so the curse of the lawyer is the skills that they had to get them into law school, get them through law school and pass the bar are all about doing A plus work and doing all of it. Like to pass the bar, you have to know all of these areas of the law. Like the last time you'll ever have a tax question is probably the day you took the bar for many of
Right.
us, for example. This concept of it doesn't have to be perfect is okay. And to me, it's kind of mixed with the concept of nobody could do it as good as I could. So, for example, taking when you're young in your own business,
Yep.
you're picking up the phone often and you're directly the first one to talk substantively to a new client
Yep.
because nobody could talk to that client as good as I could. And what we find over time is actually you have somebody who's trained at sales and customer experience, they're going to have more time and energy to be able to deliver a better experience than you could. So your score might be 85%, but their score might be 98%.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to get out of the way.
Right. Right. So getting out of the way, how does that, then I kind of go into like, well, what's your vision for your firm or your small business moving forward? Did you always envision that you would be doing all the things? And most of the time they're like, no, I didn't. I don't want that. I can't do all the things. But yet there's this struggle to get to break the mold. So that's when you have to kind of really get clear on what your vision is for this. And then how do you turn it into actions now? Right? What's the next
So let's talk about
best step? Like,
yeah.
that's what I always say. Like, what's the next best step?
You are listening in secret to the conversations we have here because our mantra is we're going to show you and help you figure out the best use of your next hour and your next dollar.
There
Like,
you
what's
go.
the best thing to do? But let's talk about the vision thing
Okay.
because I think it's another thing that challenges lawyers is to give themselves permission to really have a no holds barred vision. We our industry is a self-sacrificial industry that's reinforced by law school, it's reinforced by the profession. You are supposed to work yourself into depression and substance dependence and all that stuff. That's kind of the mantra.
Right.
I mean, trust me on this.
Yeah.
Like they say it's
But
not,
it
they say
is.
it's not, but it is. And, they'll have these bar programs about wellness and meditation and exercise. And they'll have judges who are in the same organization, right?
Yep.
Who are just, for example, just relentless. We had a case in Virginia last year where in a criminal case, one female lawyer of a team of lawyers, her mother was suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. That's not a good diagnosis. And the lawyer said, I need to get out of this case.
Yes.
And the judge said, no, you can't get out of the case. And I'm like, what are we doing here? This is absolutely crazy. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about visioning because we advocate like put aside all of the objections that you're not smart enough, you don't have enough money, you don't know enough people, right? Let's just sit down and create. Do you find that's a hard thing for like all most of the entrepreneurs that you see?
Yes.
It can't be limited to women and it
No, no,
can't be
no.
limited to lawyers,
It's
I'm
everybody.
suspecting. Yeah.
It's everybody. And I think a lot of times the next thing is like, ugh, I can't even picture a year from now or 3 years from now. You're talking, you want me to vision out 10 years from now? And I think if once I kind of say to them, picture it as a rudder on a ship, like you need to know where the ship's going. And the ship might be going towards the beach with someone holding a margarita. Like I'm not saying that you have to keep this thing going for the next 10 years. You might want to sell it. You might be out, and that's okay too. Okay. You have to kind of give them permission. I'm giving you permission to say you want to sell this thing in 10 years. Or if that's not the case,
It's
then
my baby.
right, then where do you want to go? And it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
it's not modern art in the sense with crisp, clear lines. It can be Renaissance art. It can be a vision that's got fuzzy lines. But you have to know where you're directing the ship, I think, if you're thinking 10
I,
years out.
100%. But don't you find that most entrepreneurs, most of the people who are coming to coaches like you and I, like they have been doers
Oh, yes.
and achievers
100%.
their whole life.
100%.
They have run 100 miles an hour,
Yep.
and it is a weird feeling, or it's even a weird feeling to vision. Oh, I could be on a boat with a margarita
Right.
heading towards the beach.
Right.
Like I would be embarrassed because all my team is back there working really hard. Well, yeah, but you were the last one to get paid for, the first decade
Decade.
of your business too, and you were the one on the weekends and everything.
Right.
And so, what are some of the strategies or words that you use when you're coaching a client to get over that sort of, I call it founder's guilt, right? Hump
Mm-hmm.
of, oh my gosh, it's okay to really even think about building it to sell the
It
thing.
is. It is. So I think two things come to mind. Number one, if you're having a hard time truly envisioning, like envisioning, what this might look like in 10 years, what if you just shifted and started asking yourself, what do you want it to feel like?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what do you want it to feel like? And a lot of times someone will say, I just want this to feel easy. I want things to just be flowing. I don't want it to feel so heavy or hard or hustly or that. So they can really easily relate to, or it is easier to relate to how they want to feel, maybe than how they want it to look. Okay. So that's kind of one way to do it. The other way is I say, you need to meet future you. Okay. So future you is the person 10 years from now, or it could even just be 5 years from now, who who is feeling the way you want to feel, and who maybe they're not sitting on a beach every day, but maybe they're taking 10 weeks of vacation, and they're really truly taking 10 weeks of vacation. They're not taking phone calls in the middle, right? And if you went to that future you and asked them what to do today, the advice that they would be giving you would be so clear. So sometimes people can't decide, what is my next best step, right? How should I use this next hour? Well, go ask future you how they think you should use the next hour, or what they think your next step should be. They quickly answer. Well, they would say, totally, I should hire this person, or I definitely should invest in that, or I should even get clear on who my ideal client is, not just everybody and anyone. So if you're having trouble visioning, you can either kind of get into the space of how do I want to feel, or you can kind of go to that future you. And future you, sometimes people say to me, Andrea, you're at this book called She Thinks Big. What is big thinking? I like to say it's the thinking that future you has done. Like that future you has done the big thinking. Present you, not so much, because you're kind of in your box right now, rolling along. Past you is just a teacher, but it is definitely not a fortune teller. So if you told me, well, in the past,
I like that.
okay, you like that?
That's a
Yeah,
good line.
in the past, I know myself. I know what's going to happen. I'm just going to hire this person, but then I'm going to end up spending so much time like delegating to them, and it's just not going to be. I know myself. Okay, that was the past. That doesn't have to be the future. Okay, so future you is your best source of big thinking and visioning. So I don't know how that sounds to you, but that's kind of
We like Dan Sullivan and
yeah, yeah,
Benjamin Hardy's
yeah,
book, 10X is easier than 2X, because if you vision future and you vision your business 10 times as big, and you ask yourself, like, what would you be doing to be maintaining
right.
that 10X? You figure out the things that you would not be doing, and you start by eliminating those. Tell me a little bit more about the book.
Yeah,
And I'm also, we're always curious as entrepreneurs about writing and using a book actually for client,
yeah,
member, customer acquisition. So talk to us a
Good
little bit
question.
about your book. And I didn't go back to look to see if that's your first or your
It's
31st.
my first book. I have a podcast
Yeah,
too called Time to Level Up, which I'll let you in on a little secret. The name is changing in a month of the podcast. Same podcast, different name to align with the name of the book. But, I kind
good
of
idea.
realized that the podcast was a great way to get my message out there. It's a great marketing tool. It's a great way if someone has found you somewhere else that kind of legitimizes what you're doing. And if they like the sound of what you're saying, they easily become clients. But a book is it's another vehicle. So I was going to write an ebook. And then my coach said to me, why would you write an ebook? Why would you just not write a real book? Like, what's up with that? So I kind of got talked into let's just write a real book. Now, writing a book, it's not for the faint of heart. It is quite a journey, right? But what I find is people can totally relate to, I wrote it almost more of like a series of stories. People can relate or see themselves in those stories. And that is an excellent tool to acquire new clients. So there are people out there reading my book, obviously, that I don't even know, but then sometimes they reach out, right? And they'll message me, they'll send me an email, they'll stalk me, who knows, and say, hey,
All of that.
right, all of that. What you were talking about there resonated with me. I really loved chapter 7 when you talked about stuck stress and how that's different than progress stress. And I loved how you said, you talked about like a vision and a plan, and it doesn't have to be totally spelled out piece by piece, because that scares me. So it's just been a tool to almost help legitimize what people are experiencing and feeling, and help them recognize that it doesn't have to be this way. There is help available. You just have to ask for it.
You've actually just given, and I hope people go back to listen to that, what Andrea just said there, or hit rewind. It's a great marketing tool, the art of storytelling.
Yes.
So for our members, when clients can look, so most lawyer advertising, Andrea, is like, hire me because I'm the best,
Right.
and we're either the cheapest or no fee of no recovery.
Right.
But when you're in your marketing, you can use your clients and tell stories, and people can find or see themselves in these stories, or one of the stories. They think, oh, well, this person knows like what I am going through. And I think that's just what you were relating there. When
It
someone
is.
reads, a particular chapter of the book, is, oh my gosh, sounds like she's been listening in on the stories that my spouse and I are having
Yes.
at the dinner
Yes.
table,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
I have
So
9 or 10 different client personas in the book, and they kind of, I bring them up in different chapters. And people, sometimes people will say to me, I can totally relate to your story about Joan. Like, I feel like I'm Joan, or I'm Sarah, or I'm whatever. And I think that gives them a sense of reassurance. And it also gives them a glimmer of hope, right? Like, hey, I could improve on this situation. If I hired Ben, things would be better. So I think the book's surprising me too sometimes. Like, I had someone reach out to me and say, we are reading the book in our book club. Okay. Would you be willing to talk to our book club? Okay. So I got on like a 20-minute Zoom, and I was like, okay, what are you guys reading? What are you discussing? And I shared with them some of my author insights, and, I gained clients from it. So
I'm sure they were thrilled.
they
They
were.
were thrilled by that. Like that, and that's another thing I want people who are listening to this podcast to recognize, is that those who are dinging the world will share.
Correct.
Sometimes all you have to do is reach out and ask with an interest, not just to take, but that example, like, hey, our book club is reading this. It'd be really cool if you could come on and
Right.
answer a couple questions. And you said, yeah, sure, let's look at my calendar
Right.
and let's find when we'd be able to do that. So, the other great thing about having a podcast is, I'm sure you've discovered this, is you get to talk to all sorts of people and ask them questions you want to know
Right.
the answers to.
Right.
Like, it's therapy and coaching all in one.
It is totally. It's a good way to put it.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah. Talk to us about, so a little bit, because many entrepreneurs come with a package deal. There's a spouse
Yeah.
or a partner, There's often family there. And, it's just a truth. Like the entrepreneur, like thinks differently than most
Totally true.
other human beings in the world who are not entrepreneurs. And that can sometimes be a source of
Yep.
conflict. Entrepreneur, doer, risk taker, it's all going to be good. Then there's the other in the family can be like, yeah, but I've got my eyes on the numbers up for the family.
Yep.
And
Oh yeah.
gee,
So
you left a real
I
job.
literally just released, probably in the last month, a podcast literally about this topic. And it's, kind of like, you're the big thinker, but the other person isn't. How do we resolve this conflict in a relationship? Yeah.
Yeah, so you're part like counselor there,
Yes.
right? So walk us through some advice for those who are listening here. The entrepreneurs are loneliest, can be the loneliest person in the world, right?
100%.
And they do carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, and they go home,
Right.
and you got home stuff, right?
Right.
Because
You go
you're
home, you
kind
get
of
home
like the
stuff.
king.
So I think, all right, so there's two things. Number one, going back to like, what are big thinkers do? So big thinkers talk to future you, but big thinkers also secure support. Okay. So sometimes I say, who is supporting you in this business? So I get very practical answers. Well, I have an admin team and my family's very supportive. They're very supportive. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about. Who is willing to tell you the hard things? Who is willing to help you? I like to say, you're stuck in your peanut butter jar. Okay. And when you're in that little peanut butter jar, you can't even get yourself looking up to the rim to see what's going on outside you. You can't even see if there's jelly or bread or bananas out there. And your support system, your spouse or your partner, is not going to tell you about that. They're just happy you're safe and comfortable in your peanut butter jar. So you do need to secure support 100%. But if there's sort of like this integrating, how do you integrate your ambition or your dreams with what your partner is thinking? I think there's a couple things. I mean, number one, are you clear on what you want your business or your enterprise or your career to look like? Are you really clear? Because if you're not clear, then you can't have a productive conversation, right? So sometimes people talk in big generalities, like, I want to grow this business. Okay, well, did you say, I want it to be $1 million business? Or did you just say, I want it to grow the business? You've got to get clear and kind of, and not just kind of, and share that clarity with them, because that's going to kind of do the second thing. It's going to help enroll them. I'll call it. This is like enrolling them in your dream or vision, right? And enroll them in your desire to kind of be bigger and better potentially, right? So that's sort of the second thing. I think another piece is you have to ask them to trust you, right? You have to ask them to say, I know you may not get this, but I know it doesn't make sense to you right now, and I totally understand your concerns, but I also know that you want me to be the best version of me, and I want you to be a part of that too. So I want you to support me, but I'm prepared to move forward even if you're not supporting me. Like, and I'll still love you, right? So there's that too, which is hard, super hard.
It is hard, and you have to be, and if you're going to open that discussion, you have to be brave and courageous and able to take some of the hard questions that maybe you've been avoiding
Right.
because you don't have somebody else to press you. I'll tell you one thing I think you'd be interested in. So one of the things we teach, and we learned this ourselves in COVID when there was no playbook for a worldwide
Right.
pandemic and do you work at home and all of that stuff. And so we learned to ask the question of our employees, how can we make this perfect for you? And we follow that up with, look, we can't guarantee that we can make it perfect, but if you don't have a vision of what a perfect work
Yes.
life would be for you, and you don't tell us about it, then we don't have anything to shoot towards.
Right.
And that it's a great spouse partner conversation as well, because it requires courage
Yes.
to be able to listen to the answer that you're going to get to that question.
Right.
And then to work through it. But so many people, whether it's an employee-employer relationship, whether it's business partner relationship or family partner relationship, they're afraid.
They're afraid. They're afraid.
Like of the
And
answer they might hear.
right. And I think sometimes, why someone isn't necessarily supporting you is because like they might feel threatened by this. Like it's going to mean that they're going to be inconvenienced, or it's going to mean that, you're not going to be around as much and there's going to be more of a burden on them. It also might mean that it's going to create an imbalance, like this whole work-life balance thing. Like it's not going to happen. So those are kinds of the discussions you need to have. Like, what would make this a win for you, the entrepreneur? And then what would make this a win for you, the family member or the business partner or the whatever? Defining like what would make it a win, or sometimes I say what would make it a home run, is really important. I love how you asked that during COVID. That was a great question.
The original instinct was the owners need to make up the rules. And, we had a lot of space here, so it was safe. If it was better for you to come work
Right.
inside the building, that was fine. But if you had kids at home and needed childcare, we tell us about it and let's see what we can do about it. We've carried that over. And, it is part of our culture here. And everybody, the challenge, Andrea, is no one's ever asked them that question
Right.
before. And even if they've heard that question before, it wasn't followed up with anything meaningful. So they think it's BS, just like the last time they heard
Yes.
it's BS. All this, like we're a big family and we're a happy place.
Right.
So entrepreneurs need to have courage. Let's talk about a couple of things. We talk about the small business owner, the small business founder. You say that the use of that phrase stifles growth. Talk to us a little bit about that. What you would be saying instead.
Well, to you as the founder or the owner, is your business small or is it big relative to, you? It's big. So when we think of it as like a small business, it's not small. To you, it is a big thing. And I think staying small, sometimes that can stifle the growth. So someone might say, well, actually, this happened today. This literally happened today. Someone's at the place where they really do need to hire some people. Okay. There's no way that they're going to grow any more unless they have more resources in terms of manpower, brain power. And they're afraid that they're going to kind of get too big. Okay. I'm putting that in air quotes, too big. And if they hire someone on, not only are they going to get too big, it's going to be more work for them because now they're going to have to manage this person and they don't really want to manage the person. So they're just and she literally even said this, I'm just a small business. I don't need to grow to be whatever. Well, you don't need to, but do you want to? Because the last 3 minutes ago, you just told me that you want to increase your revenue and you want to impact more people and you want more clients. So like, how are we doing this? Right. But people can go back, or she's going back to, I'm just a small business. And I think that's a story that she's telling herself. She's also making that term small business mean something. I mean, businesses that have 500 employees, I know there's like technical terms for this that we could, Google and say, what is the definition of a small business? What's the definition of a means? But, they sometimes think of themselves as small businesses depending on who the players are in their industry or in their vertical, right? So
I was just reading some article this morning. It made some big generalized statement about small business. And then in the article, it defined it as 500 and under.
yeah,
I'm like,
see? Like, I think you and I think of small businesses not 500 and under. We think of it as like 50 and under or even less. But it's all relative. It's all relative. So I think for the founder, if we're talking about founders of businesses, it's stifling to think of yourself as a small business because you really need to do some big thinking and put yourself in a different headspace than the small confines of small business.
yeah, so one of the things we say is, look, so many founders have built themselves a nice, decent paying or well-paying job.
Right.
And if that's your deliberate choice and you really don't have the vision to grow,
Yeah,
and
it's fine.
and I have a daughter who's in the dog grooming industry, and she's not an owner, but she makes a ton of money. But as I watch and go to conferences with her and watch these people who are owners and have been in the industry for 30 years, like they're still working 60
Right.
hours a week.
Right.
it's okay if that's your choice, I guess, but so many of them could build something really fabulous if they weren't the ones picking up the clippers and the scissors,
Exactly.
every single day doing a dozen dogs. So let's go back to talk about something, because we agreed that founders are people who are doers, and in the beginning of many small business, particularly law firms, you're doing everything.
Yep.
Like when you decide I'm getting out of this crap hole that I'm in working for these other people because I'm going to start
Yep.
my own gig and it's all going to be perfect. And then you end up doing everything, which is fine for a while. And many of us have been there. Most of us have been there. Then there's this movement to strategic thinker, new skill.
New skill.
Didn't teach it in law school.
No.
Didn't teach it in law school. Profession doesn't even have classes on strategic thinking for your business. They have classes on how to be a better cross-examiner, how to pick a jury. Nothing on strategic thinking for your business.
No.
But there's a mindset part, and then I guess there's a practical component. I'm curious about the mindset part first, and then I am curious about who are the authors or the other podcast hosts or gurus that you say to your clients, go listen, watch,
Yep.
read.
Yep.
Listen. But let's talk about the mindset first of getting away from the doer
Yes.
to the strategic thinker.
You've got to, I like to picture it as like a wedding cake, like a layered cake. Okay. So at the top of the cake is really the visionary. Like that's the top layer up there. That's the smallest layer. Underneath that is more of a leader. Okay. Underneath that might be a manager. Underneath that might be someone that's really they're able to follow a process. And then under that is just the task master and the doers. And I think we skip a lot of those layers, first of all, as we start to grow. Because first you're the visionary, the leader, you're the manager, you're the person coming up with the processes. And then all of a sudden you realize you need the doer. Okay, so we add the doer. And then it kind of goes from there. Sometimes we have too many doers and we don't have those middle people. But thinking strategically about why you need all of those layers is hard because you are capable of doing it. So I don't know if you're familiar with traction and entrepreneurial operating system. And
we're huge proponents. Okay. We have been running the law firm for years on it. And
because look, here's the book. How ironic. It's right here next to me. So, do they get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it? Right? Like you get it, probably, although it's hard to, increase your strategic thinking skills, but you get it, you want it, but you get to a place where you don't have the capacity, right? So then you hire for someone who does have the capacity, but do they get it? Do they want it? So I think teaching strategic thinking or infusing strategic thinking into yourself, let alone others, is really work. And I think there is an element of it that's trial and error. People are like, well, I have to try this and see if it works. True. But I do think that there's some underlying fundamental business principles that no matter what kind of business you have, it's going to apply. Even if, and then we can go into like, well, where the legal industry is different. Or people tell me, architecture is different. Medicine
My town is different.
We're just, you might not understand. Okay. Yeah, I might not understand the itty bitty nuances, but the general principles of running a business, I get. So thinking strategically with your business owner hat on versus your attorney hat is a skill. I don't know.
And so, yes. And one of the ways for folks who are listening, they know, like, one of the ways is to get yourself into rooms. So many of us have coaches, one-on-one coaches, but we also are huge proponents of mastermind groups. If it's a curated group and you're in the room with people who are doing things bigger, better, and faster than you, right? And it can be, we call mixed breed. So it can be all lawyers or it can be business owners. Because some of the best ideas in any profession, in any business vertical, some of the best ideas come from the guy next to you who's in a completely different business vertical. How do you get customers and clients?
Right.
Who are some of the people or the resources you mentioned, Traction and EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, who you send your clients to your coaching clients, say, hey, here's a person or a genre of books that would be beneficial for you
Yep.
to go and read?
I'm looking at my shelf right now.
Andrea's looking at her
I know, I'm
bookshelf.
looking at my
Yes.
bookshelf. I got a whole stack under here too. I think one of the books that is great is Buy Back Your Time, Dan Martell. I don't know if,
Yeah.
okay. So I think he's got
We're
some really practical ideas that are easy to implement that hit on the mindset issues that a lot of people have. And then he's created systems around it. I think that's a great book. I think Gay Hendricks, oh my gosh, has a goldfish on the front. Big Leap, The Big Leap. Okay, so that's kind of big thinking, that kind of book. I think that's a great one. I think a lot of what Michael Hyatt does, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but figuring out what to focus on, how to manage your day, I like following him. And then I think really understanding how to have better conversations. There's a book called Crucial Conversations. I think that's a great one.
yes.
I don't know. Those are some books that sort of just come to mind.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about like your business and your business model.
Yep.
Is it all one-on-one
No, so it's
coaching?
no. So actually, the vast majority of what I do is in small group, and it also does have some one-on-one components. So I have a mastermind, and it's funny because you said mixed breed. I'm going to borrow that because it's a mixed breed mastermind.
Yeah.
And that we meet on Zoom, but then we also get together in person twice a year. I think there's a benefit of that to have that kind of in-person component,
100%. Yes.
right?
Discussions in the halls and at breakfast and at
Exactly.
dinner time. Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I do that. And then, I've got two other groups, but one of the most fun, I think it's really the most fun and most beneficial ways that a lot of people start working with me is by doing this half day intensive, which I call Vision into Action, which is kind of creating a business plan. Because a lot of people, they created a business plan like on day one, and then it got shoved in the drawer and they haven't looked at it since. And they think, why do I even need one? I mean, I never follow it. It
Check
just
that
makes me
box. Yeah.
depressed. I never reach the goals anyway. So I really come at it as a working document that's just got two parts. I mean, it's got parts within the parts, but outlining your vision, what we were talking about, and then what are your next best steps? What are the actions? And that's something that everybody craves. And it's useful to pause, to take a half a day just to think about where you're going and how you're going to get there. Not on the fly, not in 30 minutes,
Right.
but for a whole devoting the time. Like I think one thing that's great about coaching is coaches, we hold space for people. Like we hold that space. And if we're asking the right questions while we're holding the space, you can really go farther, faster. So
It's a huge gift to give
it is.
yourself, the time to think. And that's why books like Martell, Cal Newport has a new book, the author of Deep Work, because the reality is so many entrepreneurs and particularly lawyers, it's just do all day long. You're exhausted.
Right.
You never carve out, you never give yourself the space, except for when you do have a coach or you're heading to an in-person
Yeah.
mastermind group, which if a virtual mastermind group is great, then getting together in person is 10x that. Just is. And so is your half day intensive? Are they coming to you? You're going to
No,
them,
we
or
do
they're
it. I
doing
do
it?
it virtually. I do it virtually 99% of the time. They can't come to me, but a lot of times we just do it virtually. And it's a half day, and then we do a follow-up session a couple weeks later, just after you've had time to simmer and sift through it. And I do give you some pre-work ahead of time. So it's a great intense slash, designated block of time where you will see yourself make progress. So
Is it with
there,
founder and spouse? Is it or leader? Is
it,
it leadership team or not
nope,
at
not
this
your
point?
team. Although sometimes I do them. That's a different thing. I've done it with
Yeah.
teams, but usually it's just 2 or 3 founders together. And sometimes people say, well, I just, I don't know. I think I want to do a one-on-one with you, which we could do, but there is something, because it's kind of turns into a little bit of a mastermindy kind of thing where you're gathering ideas from those 2 or 3 other people in the room. So, and I include that as part of some of my packages, but people can also do it as a standalone. So
I know that your focus, at least, is on women entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit how women are different, or how the experience of being an entrepreneur is different, do you think,
Yep.
for a woman than it is for men?
Sure.
And we're going to generalize a little bit, and somebody might not like
Right.
this
You
part of
can
the
send us
discussion, but
hate
too
mail
bad.
afterwards. It's okay. We'll listen to. I think two things. I think number one, I had actually my mastermind call today. Okay. So it's a group of women. They're all over the country. Someone's in Iowa, someone's in Florida, someone's in Texas. They're all over. And they all own different businesses. And, we start out talking about, I don't know what we started out talking about. We started out actually talking about time, but it got to a place where someone said, you know, I am feeling like, she used the roller coaster analogy. Feel like I'm at the bottom of the roller coaster, the big dip. And I'm just, I don't know how I got here, because in February, I felt like I was at the top. So I actually stopped the call. I'm like, okay, listen up, get out your pencils. I'm giving you 4 minutes to write down all of the things that you have accomplished in the last 5 months of the year, like January to now. Okay, so they did. And, 4 minutes later, we shared. And I think there was such a combination of sharing of business goals that they have achieved or things that happened in their business. But then also someone's like, yeah, and my kid graduated from college. And I, renovated my kitchen. And so all of those discussions come into play. And I always say, like, yes, we're here talking about business, but life is part of business, and it's all fair game. It's all like a big ball of yarn. So 9 times out of 10, there's some life coaching that occurs during the business coaching. And that can happen with men
Yeah.
too, but I think it happens more with women in a sense. I don't know.
Most of my talks with my law clients, who are all have my clients have some sickness or illness that prevents them from working. Most of it gets around to life
Yeah, isn't it
coaching.
interesting?
It's like, all right, what are we going to do next? Okay, you have this thing and you're getting a check from an insurance company, but you don't want to be dependent on the insurance company. Like, what?
What are we doing?
And many of them have never had someone like have that discussion with them
No.
before. The other thing, as you were saying that, like, and you were talking about the bottom of the roller coaster and the top of the roller coaster. I'm thinking, for me, like, top of the roller coaster is a really scary
It
place to
is.
be.
It is.
It's going to start to go
You're
fast
right. You're right.
and shake.
It's so true. It's so true.
All right, let's talk. This has been wonderful. You are fabulous. Tell us how people who are listening to this podcast can take a next step,
Yep.
discover more about you. Obviously, you have the Time to Level Up podcast
Yep.
to be renamed shortly.
To be renamed. So it's going to be
consistent with the She Thinks Big book.
Yes. So you can, go get the book on Amazon or your favorite bookseller. She Thinks Big. Go listen to my podcast. If you go to Andrea's with an S, links with an S, so andreaslinks.com, you're going to find links to all of these things, including my website, social media. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram the most. But, I always say to, like, I'm always open for a conversation. Like, I am always open to getting on a call with you and just brainstorming with you for a half an hour. And, if, we don't even have to work together. But I hope those calls are worth thousands of dollars, and there's no cost to it. I always learn, it's kind of like this. Like, I always learn something doing this, and I always learn something from just talking to anyone out there. So I would encourage anyone to just reach out and let's have a conversation. See if it can help you.
Again, folks, I mean, people who are producers in the world are really willing, most of them, to have a conversation like that.
Yeah.
Because we like to talk to interested and interesting people. Don't show up without a notebook if you're talking to Andrea. Like, don't just think you're going to show up and she's just going to look into your brain and magically
tell you
set up
exactly
the
what to
5-step
do
formula for success. That's not what it is, right?
Right.
But show up, be curious, check her stuff out. How big's your media team behind you? Do you have? Because you are big on media.
I don't know. A lot of it's grassroots. I mean, there's not a lot of there's nothing behind the smoke and mirrors here. So, I have tapped into resources though in the past year to help promote the book, tapped into resources to help get my message out there. But a lot of it's me and my team of people that are supporting me. I mean, I'd be honest, right? We can't do this all by ourselves. Like, I don't produce my own podcast. I'll be honest on that one. So yeah, even if it's just to say, hey, who does do your podcast or who does do your social? I mean, let's have a conversation.
Well, that team reached out to me, and that's
There you
why
go.
we ended up talking
Yeah.
to each other. Look, this has been fabulous. The book is She Thinks Big, available at any place you can buy books. And then Andrea's links, AndreasLanks.com,
Yep.
I guess,
Yep.
right? Will take you to an array of resources. It's been fabulous. Hold on for a second after we turn off. I want to just chat for another couple minutes if you have a moment. It's been fabulous. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
If you like what you just heard on the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, you may be a perfect fit for the great legal marketing community. Law firm owners across the country are becoming heroes to their families and icons in their communities. They've gone renegade by rejecting the status quo of the legal profession so they can deliver high-quality legal services coupled with top-notch customer service to clients who pay, stay, and refer. Learn more at greatlegalmarketing.com. That's greatlegalmarketing.com.